Hello and welcome everybody to the Weird World of Knowing. I am Rachel Earing, your hostess, and I have another beautiful guest with me today. Now, I've known this guest, Bob, and I keep saying Bob, and I don't know why, but I always feel like there is a Bob presence with me, and I have to say this because Bob Paddock is very much picks up on things around him and gets messages, and so do I, but I'm quite new to it. Bob has been doing this most of his life, I think, and I haven't. This has been happening for me for about the last 10 years, and I've fought against it and fought against it and fought against it, and I'm having to begin to embrace this aspect of myself into my life. And if there's any listeners out there that done energy work, maybe that you are doing Reiki or spiritual work or tapping or hypnosis, anything like that, you might find that your energy is widening in the scope of your vibrational frequencies are changing. And as they change, they open you up to listening and hearing certain things that are normally out of our usual human range because we can't see them and we can't hear them. And what that actually means is that we're picking up on things that are these higher frequencies. And I understand that, and I understand the science behind that. But when it actually happens to you, it's still a bit freaky. It's still a bit weird. And it takes some time to adjust to it. And I'm not even quite sure you ever really do, because Bob, do you actually ever get used to it? So, Bob, hello. Delighted to have you here.
Hello. Thank you for the wonderful introduction there, Rachel. To answer your question, you never really do get used to it, but often because it's a surprise. You just blurt out things and you don't know they're coming.
We're so glad you've said that, because that is so true, isn't it? And you feel a bit stupid, don't you, sometimes, because you can be talking about something and then all of a sudden you come out with things like Bob, and that feels like, why did I need to say Bob? But I know that there's another Bob with us right now, and that feels very very relevant for me, because I'll come on to that later. But explain, Bob, what you actually mean by that, because this is for you has been going on since you're a child, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. All my life, my first conscious memory that I retain of it is when I was 7. My friend Jeff and I were on our bicycles. We're on this long lane looking down the end of the lane to a farm where we really weren't supposed to be. It was a private lane. I mean, 7-year-olds don't really read no trespassing signs all that well. And we're just looking down the lane, standing there, leaning on our bicycles. And I say to Jeff, for no reason at all, someday I'm going to live in that house. And when I turned 22, I moved into that house and I lived there for 5 years.
Wow.
So from 7, at age 7, I knew what I was going to do when I was 22. How did I know that?
How did you know that?
I'm hoping you or somebody listening to this can tell me, because I have spent my life searching, trying to find out.
Well, I think it's really interesting that you've mentioned that, because the more I'm finding out scientifically about what we do on a spiritual level, on a healing level, whether we're sending healing, or that can be people at the other end of the world, and we work with them at a distance, but the healing still works, and it works extremely well, and it's very potent. But that actually happens regardless of time and distance of when we send it and when it is received. So it can be sent, I can send it in the morning and they might not receive it until the evening or the next day. It arrives when it is ready for that client to receive in the most perfect, beautiful way for them, if you set it with that intention. Now, scientists are actually proving the fact that actually when they measure, and if people want to listen to Peter Merry podcast that's been recorded, if you look at Peter Merry's interview with me, you'll find that the measurements, the statistics with the random event generators and other machineries that they are using to measure what happens in a room, or what happens when you send intention to people from one place to another. Actually, the effects happen regardless of whether you send it beforehand or after or at the same time. And that might blow a few people's minds, but please do go and have a listen to the Peter Merry interview, because it's very interesting. So to follow on from that then, Bob, what other things have happened to you that have just been that little bit weird, because really we can run through the whole of your life really to date, but I think you're going to have to be selective about what you tell us, because I know that there are so many, but this is your normal life, isn't it? This is just what happens, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, exactly. There's a line out of Harry Potter that is, paraphrasing is, Professor Dumbledore said, "By now, I've just learned to go with it. Whatever happens. Okay, this is my life now. This is what we're doing now. Great. Yeah, all you can do is embrace it."
Yeah, I think we do reach that stage eventually, don't we? As much as we might try to resist it. So when you were 22, what sort of happened from the age of 22 onwards when you'd arrived in that house?
Let me insert one thing before the age of 22 that I think is important. As I mentioned about just blurting out things. When I was about 17, we were carpooling to Votech, the four of us neighborhood kids, and my next door neighbor Johnny was driving. Kevin was in the front passenger seat. I'm sitting behind Johnny in the back seat. George is sitting next to me in the back seat. We're stopped at a traffic light. There's a big box truck in front of us, and the light turns red. We start moving through the intersection, and for no reason at all, in the middle of the intersection, I just blurt out at the top of my lungs, "Stop!" I didn't know that was coming.
No.
Had no idea why. And we're just sitting there blocking the intersection all four ways. So horns are starting to beep at us from every direction. And Johnny's starting to turn around to me and ask, "What the heck?" using more colorful language.
I can imagine.
And just as he's about to say that, the loading dock on that big box delivery truck fell down. Had we been behind it, it would have crushed the front of the car.
Wow.
And he turns to Kevin in the front seat and says, "How did he know?"
Gosh.
I don't have that answer. I'm hoping somebody there does and can tell me.
So things happen. You don't feel anything or see anything. It just comes out of your mouth. Is that right?
There are there's three levels. There's just to blurt out spontaneously. Then there's the next one where you asked about age 22. Next significant thing is January 28th of 1986. And many people will remember that date. If you don't, you're about to know why you would remember that date. I'm living in a very small apartment. I had just gotten my first real job not long ago from here. And I hadn't moved into that house of 22 years just yet. It's 7 a.m. It's a small efficiency apartment. I'm reaching into the refrigerator to get my milk to put on my cereal. The news is playing on the radio on top of the refrigerator, and they're talking about the pending launch of the Space Shuttle Challenger that is around 11 a.m. or so. I don't remember the exact time. And I'm not paying any attention to it. Open the refrigerator, I reach in, I pick up the milk, and on the back left here, it felt like somebody whapped me with a board, just for no reason at all. And over behind my right ear, it's like someone standing behind me. I mean, it wasn't in my head.
No.
It was very clearly someone standing behind me. And I don't know if somebody else had they been in the room, if they would have been able to hear this voice. Maybe they could have. It says, "No, it's too cold. It's going to explode." The words were clear and unmistakable. There was no ambiguity to them, but I did not understand the message.
No.
I'm holding a carton of cold milk, and I'm like, "I like cold milk. Why is my milk going to explode?" The message was clear, but I just did not understand it.
Yeah.
And several hours later, as we all know, the Space Shuttle Challenger blew up and all those souls were lost. The nerd in me knows that hydrogen burns in the ultraviolet. There was a hydrogen fire. Eventually they showed you a clip where you could see this little thing burning. But hydrogen burns in the ultraviolet. You can't see it burning. If you see anything, you see the particles that are oxidizing around it, not the actual hydrogen that's burning in the ultraviolet. People have died because they've walked into hydrogen fires because they couldn't see them.
Gosh.
So that's the ultimate level of unexplained knowing. And we'll come back to that a couple other times where it's even more profound.
Absolutely. So carry on. I'm going to just let you flow with this, Bob, because I don't want to interrupt you. So I'm just going to let you flow, because there's going to be things will just knock on from this for you, won't they?
Okay. I'd moved into that house, that cottage that I saw when I was 7. I mean, our friends hung out there. I was just there about a year ago, I went down to visit, just, bicycling around for exercise, walking around. That house was gone. There was no evidence it was ever there. There was no foundation. There was nothing. Had people not had memories of it, other people that had been there, you wouldn't have ever known that house was there. And I found that in itself weird.
The house that you lived in?
For 5 years, it no longer existed. There was no evidence at all it ever existed. No foundation, nothing.
Did anything significant happen whilst you were in
The only real significant thing that happened in the house was that's when I met my late wife, Karen, but we haven't got to Karen yet. The next most significant weirdness happens long before Karen entered my life. I hadn't met her yet, didn't know her at this point. I'm sitting in a restaurant. Now, you can go to restaurants where you might expect something like this to happen. This was not that kind of place. This was just your normal family restaurant at the local mall. And I'm sitting there waiting for the waitress to come take my order. Now, I had seen this waitress before, but she never waited on me. We never had any kind of interaction at all. And she comes up to me after a few minutes taking care of the other customers. And when she comes up to the table with her pad in hand, like I'm expecting, what can I get you? And instead of saying, what can I get you? She immediately starts talking about witchcraft. And I'm sitting there a little perplexed. I've never interacted with this young lady before. And I just ask her, is this how you greet all your customers? Maybe it's her thing.
Yeah.
And remember, this isn't the kind of place where you expect that. And her reply was, again, something I'd like the viewers here to answer for me, because I'm still searching for the related answer, is no, we recognize our own. And so we carried on a conversation about witchcraft until she took my order and went off and got what I ordered for dinner. I don't make a claim to I'm a practicing witch or anything, but I read anything that's related to energy. Witchcraft is just one more thing related to energy. Ultimately, everything is energy, from the quantum physics realm into realms that we don't understand yet. It's all energy.
And you've studied this as well, Bob, because this is your life as well, isn't it? You're very into the science of it all. And just tell us briefly what you do for a living so that people know the background of how into energy you are.
I am a nerd. If you've ever seen the movie, if you've never seen the movie Revenge of the Nerds, go watch it. If you can see here on the camera, I'm even wearing my nerd shirt.
Nerd, I prefer the term intellectual badass for those of you who are on the podcast rather than the YouTube. I love it.
And anyway, I'm about the age of the people in the movie Revenge of the Nerds. And to me, it was not a movie. It was a documentary of my life, complete with being beat up by the football team kind of thing.
Right.
Again, I was different. I was always being picked on because I was different. And, in this high school kind of era that I was in when that came out, I hadn't quite fully embraced being a nerd. I'd realized I was a different and just didn't fit in with that crowd. Eventually I found kind of my tribe and still looking for other tribes that are related. But to continue on, my day job is designing computer hardware. I design embedded systems. I design all those little computers that run the world that no one thinks about if I did my job well. Your digital thermostat on your wall, the computer running your engine in your car, your TV clicker, the control for your microwave oven. For 22 years, I designed primarily the electronics for coal mining equipment. I have been in a lot of coal mines. I know how to design for environments that most people's stuff would fall apart within seconds. You can't get an any more analytical job than designing computer hardware.
No.
So I try to always stick to the science. How does this stuff work? So, and that's had me meet people that I don't know how I meet them. They just kind of appear in my life. It's people that you wouldn't normally expect to meet. We might get to remote viewing here in a little while. I've met and spent a lot of time with Joe Mamato, one of the best remote viewers in the world, if not the best remote viewer from the original Stargate program. I've interacted with a couple other people directly from the Stargate program.
Fantastic.
I've had people tell me that are more objective about my life, that I'm being guided, because I'm open. I've learned to be open to this stuff, whatever this stuff is. But I'm always trying to find the explanation for it
Yeah.
at some scientific level. I keep trying to find out, how does this stuff work? Why do I get what I get? Why do I know these things that I know that just spontaneously pop out?
And do you have any answers yet?
Nothing concrete, other than, ultimately we create our own realities each individually. We're collectively sharing this conversation because we're in some collective reality, but there's something going on at some higher level that we can get to here shortly in the continuation of my life.
Yeah, just carry on, Bob.
But the next significant thing is, Karen enters my life. I'd been a nerd all my life. Girls were scary, women were scary. Honestly, they still are. It's 1989. Karen Jenner graduates high school. We meet around, I think I'm around age 23 or so at that point. We know each other, but we're not dating or anything at this point. I guess it was 1987. She was a waitress at, coincidentally, that same restaurant where the witchcraft thing happened. A few years later, that lady had moved on, just vanished shortly after, the whole witchcraft conversation. Karen entered my life, and we weren't dating or anything. Now, the reason the whole Karen part is important here is because it contributes to some of the questions of the weirdness.
Okay.
And even some weirdness is like the lamp just turned off there, if anybody knows.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. Those kind of things happen. That one is technologically explaining, nothing particularly weird about it. And Rachel, if you want me to stop now and turn that on, let me know. I can do that.
We're okay. We're okay. Go on.
Yeah. Okay. I meet Karen. We are not dating or anything at this point, but we do know each other from the restaurant. We interact. And then she has a car accident. That starts her having extremely bad headaches when she's laying down, but they go away when she is up. We learn much later that's caused by a cerebral spinal leak. Now, I'm not going to turn this into a thing about all that, but it's important to the story. And at that point, we start dating after she has the car accident. In 1993, we get married. I'm 27 at that point. She's around 23, I think, then. Life continues on. We go to 35 different doctors trying to find out why Karen was having these headaches. And at Dr. 35, we just gave up on the medical establishment, knowing that they just weren't going to help us.
Yeah.
And Karen started studying herself. In the car accident, she hit her head. That gave her obsessive compulsive kind of stuff, but she put it to use in studying.
Okay.
Eventually, she could have got her PhD in anything she wanted in the book learning. She didn't have her hands-on experience, but in the book learning, she took on the top people in the world eventually. Now, to get to why that's important, the next thing weird that happens in my life, remember, I've had precognition all my life in varying degrees. Usually it's more mundane, like I'll know the next Star Trek episode that I'll see. I mean, in the great scheme of things, what does that really matter? I'd rather know the next lottery number. So far, that hasn't happened.
But it's that compounding, isn't it, of, just proving to you it's still around, it's still happening, to take notice of it.
Definitely. And you have to be open and more to notice it, because it happens a lot and we don't really notice it. Because you might have this precognitive flash and then it doesn't happen for a long time. It never happens because of something called paradox intervention. You got the precognitive flash. You did something to prevent it. Say you knew you were about to have a car accident, so you went a different way. You don't have the car accident. Well, there's the paradox that you prevented by having exactly the precognition.
Yeah.
So you just have to start paying attention to the littlest of things.
Yeah. It's like a training, isn't it? I think it's like you're being trained to take notice of this higher version of yourself, let's call it that, for now, to start listening, to trust yourself above anything else that's going on around you, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I can give you an example, and it doesn't always play out exactly as you saw. Yeah, it's winter time. I'm walking around the local mall because it's too cold to be out on the local bike trail. We've got a beautiful bike trail here. Hopefully you can come see it someday.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, we own 66 miles of trail and 42 of it's paved. We have the longest section between Pittsburgh and Erie that's paved. You know, trying to complete Lake Erie to Washington, D.C. is what the ultimate goal is.
Yeah.
So it's wintertime. I'm walking at the local mall, and as I pass this one door, I get a very vivid vision. You know, it doesn't always come as vision. It's usually more audio, but this time it was a vision of a lady walking in and spilling her purse. In the vision, I'm helping her. I bend down and I'm helping her pick up her stuff. But initially, she very clearly thought I was going to steal her stuff
Right.
because she took her wallet and the lipstick and all this stuff. I mean, is this guy going to steal my wallet? And no, that's not the kind of person I am. I just helped her, handed her stuff. She put it in her purse in this vision, and we just passed each other. She went on to the mall. I'm walking, continued making laps in the vision. The vision ends. I just continue making laps, and like 2 laps later, at the same door, an elderly lady walks in, spills the same exact black purse, and as I approach her, she is finishing picking up all her stuff. You know, the elderly lady had far less stuff than the younger lady in my vision did, but it was the same black purse. And she had picked up. And she had fallen down. The younger lady in the vision didn't fall down.
Right.
So I asked her, she'd gotten up and everything picked up by the point I reached her, and I asked her, "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." She went on in toward the mall. I made some laps. So it was a very clear vision of a black purse.
Mm.
Nothing else fit
Yeah.
except the black purse. Why? I have no idea. Now getting back to the continuing weirdness, the next weird event, we bring Karen back in. We got married in 1993. It's now 2004. As we've already established, I have precognition to varying degrees from the mundane to the profound. This is probably the most profound of them all. It's a Saturday. Karen is going to get a meat platter out of the cupboard. We're going to cook something on the grill. I am elsewhere in the house. I am about to walk into the door to the kitchen, and at that moment, again behind my right ear, not in my head, it's very clearly standing behind me, I hear this very stern voice say, "No, she needs the lesson." And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I say nothing, which to this day I do regret. And Karen opens the door to the cupboard.
Yeah.
The plate falls out exactly as I envisioned. It breaks. Nothing particularly profound happened at that moment. We just had a bunch of broken glass in the kitchen to clean up.
Yeah.
We did that. We threw it in the garbage, and we went on and got a new plate and cooked dinner, and nothing happened yet. But the question I have for everybody watching is that voice very, very definitely, very clearly knew what I was about to verbalize and ultimately didn't. It very clearly knew the consequences in the future of me saying it. How? Why? Where? I want those answers. And I've spent my life trying to find them. Now, why that's important is, okay, we established the dish broke, and I said nothing immediately happened.
Mm.
Now, a week later, it's Saturday again. We're supposed to go to my mother-in-law's, Karen's mother, Mary, her family, and have a picnic. It's a beautiful sunny Saturday day. Karen and I gave up the plan that she would take the garbage out. I'd go out and get the mail that had just arrived. I'd bring the mail in. We'd meet in the garage and depart. So I'm outside. I got the mail. I walked into the kitchen, and instead of Karen being out in the garage ready to depart, I found her sitting in the biggest pool of blood I had ever seen. When she got that bag of garbage that had been fermenting for a week out of the garbage, remember it had a broken glass from the plate in it, and garbage, it swung past the artery behind her left knee and sliced the artery. She had blood gushing out at some
Oh,
point. I didn't see that because she grabbed a dish towel. She was applying pressure.
yeah.
She had enough wherewithal to deal with that, but she was still with her hand feeling the garbage bag. What happened? She didn't understand what happened. I understood immediately what happened, and
Yeah.
I'm thinking to her as I'm dialing 911, the emergency people. For those who have different numbers, they think it's 112 for you. Anyway, I knew what happened, but she's like trying to cut her finger off on this garbage bag from my
Oh,
perspective. And the 911 lady says, "Don't leave the phone," but I can't reach Karen. I can't reach the garbage bag. The lady's yelling at me, "Don't leave the phone." I said, "Lady, I got to leave the phone." And I went and grabbed the garbage bag,
yeah.
threw it across the kitchen so Karen couldn't reach it.
Yeah.
We went and dealt with the whole trip to the ambulance and stuff. Now, again, that's not particularly weird, but it's important to the story. Remember, the voice knew what was coming.
Yeah.
It's now like a week. She went to the ER,
Yeah.
got stitched up, came home. It's now a week later. Yeah, not quite a week later. It's the following Wednesday. I'm at work. Karen calls me on the phone and says again, or says it to me on the phone, "I see a red line going up my leg from the stitches. I'm going to the emergency room." I broke into the boss's office, had his door closed, which normally you just don't go in the office. And I didn't
Yeah.
even knock. There was a meeting going on. Hey, I'm leaving. Karen's having issues. Bye.
Yeah.
Karen had learned enough medical knowledge by that point from all that studying for years, like in
Yeah.
the book learning, as I mentioned, that she had cellular myelitis. She had a blood infection, and it was heading toward her heart.
Oh, gosh.
She got to the emergency room before I arrived, and the ER doctor is asking to the nursing staff, and Karen told me this later, what idiot stitched her up like this? And the nurse is trying to suppress a giggle, says, "You did."
Oh, gosh.
And they stitched her up, and this is important to the story, because they gave her Levaquin at that point. Levaquin has some profound side effects that you can find about on Karen's website. I'm not going to cover them here. I'll tell everybody, never take Cipro, never take Levaquin, never take anything in the fluoroquinolone family. Even the FDA itself says it's an antibiotic of last resort, but the doctors are still giving it out like candy. And remember, the voice said, she needs the lesson. Well, that's the start of whatever the lesson was, that point. Because that, on top of the spinal leak that I mentioned from 1989 previously, became a profound lesson. We spent a lot of time in the medical establishment. You can find out all about that in the documentary Pain Warriors. So I'll just leave that at go watch that documentary.
Yeah, we'll put all the links in below, don't worry.
And okay, so that's the beginning of the lesson. Continuing on with the voice, the next most profound thing happens is, was there something else in there? I think there was something else, and it's just not coming to mind. But the next most profound thing, I mean, there's some mundane stuff happening all along here. The next most profound thing is, I am sitting at my computer. It is August the 7th. It's 3:30 Eastern Daylight Time. Just typing away at my keyboard, doing my embedded system design stuff. And for no reason at all, it felt like I had just sat in a light socket. Like I just plugged my tailbone in a light socket, and it shot up my spine. And I never want to experience that. Somebody said that might be like a condition, or at least if that's how pronounce it, I'm not sure pronunciation. If that is, I never want to have one. Most people find it a profound, enlightening thing, but if it's like that, I do not want it. And again, behind my right ear is a voice saying, "Someone died." Didn't say who, didn't say where, didn't say why. That's all it said. And 4:30 that day I went home. I always called Karen precisely at 4:30 when I left work. She didn't answer the phone. We know for sure Karen died at her own hand because between 3:23 and 4:30.
Oh, but
And because of the failure of the medical establishment, we'll try to leave that. But it's important to some of the things that come. That profoundly altered the trajectory of my life. I became an advocate for people with pain and stuff. But what else is important to know is the person that I was, not the person you know, Rachel, today.
Okay.
The person that Karen knew
Yeah.
died with her. Now, we'll get to that momentarily, why I say that. And it's also another question I have for the viewers. How much of our life is prescripted? It's certainly weird enough.
Absolutely.
And when are the transition points, and why are there transition points? Okay, we established Karen departed then because of the failure in the medical establishment. My life changes. I ended up going back to Duke, where Karen was being treated. You know, we sought out the best people in the world. Duke in Durham, North Carolina, is where J.B. Rhine started the study of what we know today as extrasensory perception, ESP, as we typically call it today. And eventually, because Rhine was finding positive results, he found it was getting too hot for the Duke University.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted him off the campus because it was working. You know, he was getting positive results with all this woo-woo, for lack of a proper name.
Just explain a little bit further what that is for people, Bob.
There's a whole big genre. What we're
Well, just a small part of the ES.
As Rachel mentioned earlier in introduction, you know things. There was a lot of well-designed studies, and we've learned how to do very well-designed studies because we know the world is full of skeptics. And you have to understand all those weird people out there that I'm talking to that hopefully become part of my tribe. You're going to meet skeptics. It does not matter what evidence you present to them. You could present the Almighty themselves standing before them, giving them not believe it.
Oh gosh, that's so profound, Bob. That is so untrue. It really is true. Yeah.
Do not waste your energy on those people. You have a limited amount of energy. Use it how you want. Don't get sucked into what's called a pendulum in reality transurfing. Yeah, if you've never heard of it, go read the book by Zealand. It's definitely worth the read and following.
Fantastic. We'll put that link in as well, everybody. Bob has got so much information. Carry on, Bob.
And I've just collected all this information. Usually the weirder the stuff, the easier it sticks to my memory.
Yes.
Ask me to pick up a loaf of bread and bring it home. I may not. Yeah.
I am so entering your world of weirdness. I really am, because it's things like that that just don't seem to matter. It seems to matter intensely that we are being curious all the time about these weird things that happen, because the more curious we are and following that path, it takes us on this very enlightened journey. That's the only way you can describe it. It's not always pleasant though, as we're finding out, Bob, from your story, but the learnings that are coming from this, let's go back now to what have been your learnings now from all of this.
Okay, we've established Ryan is the expert. He's doing his thing in the 30s to when he passed in the mid 60s. I never got to meet him, unfortunately. I mean, I was like 4 maybe when he passed on. I have met his daughter, Sally. I've interacted a lot with her. She'll appear here again in the story of weirdness. Getting back, to answer your question, there's been a lot of studies of how does this stuff work? And the answer is ultimately, we still don't know. But we do know it does work. We've stopped being skeptical of it. There's very clear scientific evidence with very well-designed studies, because the people designing the studies, they will be raked over the coals by the skeptics.
Yeah.
So they make more effort than anyone to design proper studies.
Yes.
And here's an example from nerdom. The world's largest super collider, the Higgs collider, in CERN, the statistical evidence that they use to present that the God particle, the Higgs boson particle, existed statistically was this little tiny bump in a graph of statistics. Had anyone in the field of parapsychology presented that little statistical bump as proof of anything, they would have got their ass handed to them for a badly designed study.
Gosh, why?
So to get back into the story, Karen and I spent a lot of time at Duke University. And the first day we arrived there at the hotel, we'd never been in Durham. We almost got killed arriving by the traffic that we didn't understand how it worked then. You know, it's a 10-hour drive for us. We're very tired. We can see the hotel. We're on the GPS lady just told us, exit right. We can see the hotel. We're exhausted from the 10-hour drive. We're about to merge onto this exit ramp according to the GPS lady. And I suddenly realize it's an on-ramp for a 4-lane road.
What that means, sorry, because I'm from the UK.
It is simultaneously an exit from the road we're on, and it's an entrance ramp from a completely different freeway. It's a 1-lane exit for us trying to cross to the right.
Yeah.
It's a 4-lane road for them trying to cross to the left.
Gosh, well.
We got a sudden education in driving in Durham at that moment. It was a lot of fun.
No, it wasn't.
We did eventually get to the hotel. Yeah, we got unpacked, and maybe it was because we were tired. We just went to bed. Maybe it was the next day. I'm looking through the book in the hotel, you know, like you find in any hotel room, book of local attractions. And there's a little thing down there in the page. It says Rhine Research Center and gave the address. It didn't really say what they did, the ad, but I recognized the name. So anytime Karen was stable, mostly from the treatments and stuff, she was just laying in a hotel room sleeping because she wasn't allowed to move. So she would just be for hours and hours just laying in her bed sleeping. I went around literally the corner to the Rhine Research Center. So I got to hang out with the top people in parapsychology, the people to this day that are doing the experiments. You know, they just opened a second bioenergy lab. What that means is they have a double dark room where there is no light. The light is very controllable. No light from outside enters. They have this very large photon multiplier that it can pick up 1 photon of light.
Yeah.
In a typical dark room, just spontaneously because of quantum physics, there might be 4 to 20 photons in a minute.
Gosh.
So they bring in people who claim to be healers. I haven't actually been inside the room as a participant yet, but I've got to watch from the outside from the control room. And you find some videos of this on the Rhine Research. They bring in some healers and have them do their things. You know, Reiki practitioners, people who claim they can leave their body.
Yeah.
And from Nerdum, they actually asked me to design a scale that can be sensitive enough to detect when somebody who claims to leave their body can be detected on the scale. That is far harder than you think it is.
Yes, I can imagine.
Because you're trying to measure the weight of, say, a 2-ounce soul leaving a body of, you know, a 200-pound person. And here's a bit of nerdum for you, because you might not. I know you're dealing in kilograms and stuff there. Going back to nerdum and not fitting in, I always had issues with the established medical, or not the medical, just the established school system. It's made me become an advocate for homeschooling. One of the things that happened that contributed to that is I'm in the class where I got my degree for electronics. This is after high school. It's a 2-year degree program. The physics teacher gave us the first test of the year. You know, it was, you know, like he taught us for a week. Everything in the class was in the metric system. Everything. The first test he gave us, every single thing on the test was in the English system.
Oh, God.
Conversions were never mentioned in the class. The textbook was purely in the metric system because that's what physics is. But the test, every single thing of it was the English system. The very profound memory I have from that, and I think it was kind of his point, was units are important.
Okay.
In the metric system, the kilogram or the gram is a unit of mass. It is not a unit of weight.
Okay.
In the metric system, weight is the Newton. You don't usually have any idea of that, I'm sure.
Oh,
you think
kilograms
are a unit of weight. Nope, they're not. In the English system, weight is ounces and pounds. Most people are aware of that. But the unit of the mass is the slug. How many times have you heard anybody talking about slugs as unit of mass? Most people think slugs are these little crawly creatures. Just a sidebar for okay, so we're back at the Rhine Research Center in the bio. They bring in healers, and remember the normal background is for to 20 photons. They've had numbers as high, peaks as high as 1.2 million photons per second in this room from healers. More average is, say, 400,000 when people are doing things like Reiki or stuff. So we are learning to do the science.
Yeah.
And there is science behind a lot of this. We can, with the right equipment, we're learning to detect it. You already mentioned Peter, who was involved with the PAIR lab, Princeton Engineering Laboratory, however, whatever the PAIR acronym is, who's now ICRL. The PAIR lab was closed.
That's right.
And you got to meet Brenda when she donated all that equipment. You can mention that here at some point. But the point of this study of randomness is very important in all of this. And I've always been fascinated by randomness. And I just read a paper on symmetrons in quantum physics as the ultimate random number generator. Can I claim to understand what a symmetron is or what I was reading in this physics quantum paper? Not really, but I muddle through this kind of stuff because that's how you learn.
It is. It is, but by pushing our boundaries, as deeply as uncomfortable as it might be sometimes, it's very interesting.
Now, continuing on for this story, I don't know that there's any more profound voices, but there's more mundane things happening. Now, I've gone back to Duke since Karen has died. First, because there was a story published in the local paper that they were talking about a new course starting because of Karen's death. I had her body exhumed and it was donated to Duke to learn what the cause of her actual issue was. And that changed the direction of medical stuff.
Yeah.
And eventually Karen known as Karen's journal, was entered as FDA evidence against the fluoride. And that has had profound effects on people. I just talked to a lady on Friday about how all that helped her change her life, but that's not really all that weird.
Fantastic.
And getting back to the weirdness now, because I'm back at Durham, I always scheduled things for when the Rhine would have events. And right now there's events you can participate in, typically the first Friday, and I think it's at 7 o'clock standard time zone, pardon me. And I think it's the third Wednesday at 3 p.m. in Eastern time zone. Sadly, I usually don't get to participate in those because I'm slaving over my keyboard at my day job. I'd really like to find somebody who can make all this weird stuff. How can I apply all this stuff, fun stuff, weirdness, to be my day job?
Well, how can you? I think that's a very question. How can you?
Hopefully somebody watching
has
an
our
offer.
mission in life, isn't it? It's how do we now transfer all of this knowledge into something where you can be teaching and helping and showing others?
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because in more my wife, because of my late wife, my wife continues to kind of be present in ways, influencing things, whether directly or not, I have no way of knowing. Just there's a lot of oddness, weirdness to be appropriate here. So I'm spending time at the Rhine Research, and I've mentioned the bio stuff. So there's studies going on. Because of the thing that the paper mentioned, I didn't know anything about, because to validate the story I told them, Karen's story ended up on the cover of the local paper, which was a complete surprise to me. I just asked him to do this little thing in the corner, for her birthday. Her birthday came and went. He said, well, they're not going to do anything. And one day, like 2 months later, I wake up and somebody tells me, hey, Bob, you're on the cover of Derek today. And I'm like, what? So I have the electronic subscription. I went and looked, and there I am holding a photo of Karen. But anyhow, I went to do, and as I mentioned, Rhine has online today because of the pandemic. But back in 2004, it is physically then. I went to one of their Friday night events, and it was Brenda Dunning.
Oh yeah, Brenda Dunn, yeah.
And the other fellow, there was two fellows very involved with the PAIR lab, and it was the engineer, I think it was Robert, I'm not quite sure of his name at the moment, but I think it was him. They were the speaker that night for the Rhine Friday night event. So this is an example of my life of, I get to meet some of the top people, in parapsychology. It wasn't planned.
Mm.
It was directed. By whom or where, I don't have that answer. Maybe someone here does.
Well, and you've also directed me to Brenda, because it was through you that I ended up at Broughton Sanctuary, wasn't it, Bob? And this is why this podcast is now happening. So it's strange how all these connections sort of happen and then play out into a bigger field.
And is it strange at all? Obviously, from our perspective, it is. But did that event in 2014, had it been already planned?
Well, what's very interesting here, Bob, is that when we did these experiments at Broughton Sanctuary in November last year, we were sending the intentions before the people were set to receive, 35 minutes beforehand. So then what they sent back to us, because they had 4 pictures to choose from, and they'd not made that decision, but we'd already set our intentions. And well, we were already describing what we could see. Let's put it that way. We were already describing what we could see, and they hadn't yet chosen the picture they were going to send to us. So when they came back and we dissected what had actually been sent through to us, it was very, very interesting indeed in how correct we were. This does prove to me, and there is just this sense now of time does work not in a linear way. It's not linear. The past, the present, and the future all seem to be happening at the same time. And we're just present in this form now, but that doesn't mean that perhaps there are other versions of us that are able to give us warnings, guidance.
Yeah, very true. I've had 1 or 2 people tell me that voice isn't some other whoever, it's some version of me, my higher self. Yeah. Something. If that's true, I want to have a really good, profound talking with myself.
But I feel that, because everything that you've been saying about that voice, it is here at the back of the right side that you actually sort of tend to hear these things. Is here, and I know that when I'm meditating, sending healing, anything like that at all, with the work that I do, the energy that I do, my head turns involuntary to the right to see what I need to see. And I know that from the remote viewing that they've done at Pairs and with other things that I've seen, actually, when people have got the blindfolds on and they're actually able to see in front of them and walk and drive cars and bicycles and things like that, they are doing it from that perspective of their head turned to the right hand side, and it's as if they are seeing before it goes through their eyes. So you're not seeing it through your eyes, you're seeing it from that perspective behind you, that energy system behind you before it reaches your eyes. And on that note, I think we might need to finish, because we will be here literally all day, Bob, talking, because we have so much to cover. But I can't thank you enough for the wisdom, the weirdness, the really in-depth and heartfelt stories of Karen. Thank you deeply for sharing that, because I felt that all the way through. And to know that those voices have been there, and then the effects that had on someone that you loved so dearly, and to lose her so early on through that process, that's not an easy thing to deal with.
There's one thing I want to add, because I think it's important here, is Karen came through a medium obviously after she died, not long after she died, and she said about seven different things. I don't remember them all. The more profound ones was, in our next life together, we have a son. In this lifetime, we have no children. That's cool, but more concerned about this lifetime. I've already sent the dog. I just had to put down our last dog because he had a stroke when this is taking place. She says, you are about to start a new important mission. Sadly, she neglected to tell me what it was, but the reason I bring it up here is the next thing is, she said, you played your part well. Apparently, Karen and I signed up for that whole saga.
Yeah.
Before we ever arrived in this realm. So there are transition points in our lives. Did that event in 2013 with me meeting Brenda cause you to meet her last year?
It did, Bob. Yeah, I know it did. I just know it did. Found heaviness, yet lightness that has just surrounded me, and it is literally all around my head. And it's a really pertinent sense of peaceful knowing that we are most definitely on our right path. And how we've connected again is another story. But what you've just said there about you played your part well, I understand. I understand that from the passing of my own father and my brother and I's role in his in the whole saga, because my dad's life was a saga, the whole saga of his life. And I believe that we only end up on the path that we are on, Bob, because of the suffering that we witness with the people that we love so much, because otherwise we just wouldn't go there. We just wouldn't do it. We'd have no need to. We'd just carry on in this happy-go-lucky little existence of carrying on with whatever it is we needed to do. But because of the suffering that we have been significantly shown and witnessed and been part of, it absolutely catapults us into something else.
And there's multiple versions of why we're here. Philosophers have been trying to give that answer. One of it is so we can suffer. I hope that's not the answer. I hope as we can, because
no, I don't think it's to suffer. I think it's to experience the emotions. I think it's to experience being human, and that includes all of the emotions of being human. And there's a lot there, you know what I mean? And it's intense, but we physically have a body to feel it through. And I think that's what makes the difference. We're in this form to physically feel the alchemy of it transitioning through us from that huge physical pain, discomfort, through to clearing it. What does that feel like, these clearances? And then it transforming into something lighter, more beautiful and powerful and joyful.
Definitely. Yeah, my life has been somewhat more joyful since Karen's passing. Like I said, that person died that I was. That I said here at the very beginning of the podcast, that person, you, Rachel, never met that person. Yeah. And that's a good thing. But anyhow, like you said, this can continue on for a long time. Maybe there'll be a part 2 where it continues.
Oh gosh, yeah, I'm feeling it.
I will give you some show notes for some science people can read, retrocognition and some studies that have been proven because they were so unbelievable. A lot of people replicated them because they just didn't think they'd work that way. Yeah. So we'll just end there.
Absolutely. Bob, absolute pleasure to spend this time with you. Listeners, I really do hope you've taken something, at least just one thing from this beautiful chat with Bob. Do send in any questions that you might have, and we can get those through to Bob, and I'm sure I'll be more than happy to answer them. If this has resonated with you in any way, with some of your own weird, strange things that have happened in your life, please do come and let us know, because this is all about us trying to make this weird stuff as normal as possible, because it's just part of us and it happens all the time. And the really simple everyday things that we have these knowings from, they're important because they lead to the bigger ones, these epiphanies, these, profound moments in time where we really do notice. So Bob Paddock, thank you so much for being here. It's been an absolute delight. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. God bless. We'll see you soon. Thank you so much for listening on The Weird World of Knowing. I do hope you enjoyed your time with us. I'm Rachel Earing, your host. And gosh, I'm having a ball putting all of this together for you, so I hope you are too. And if you are, please do like, subscribe and share with those who might actually benefit from these weird moments of knowing as they realise how many of their own they've been having all their life. Take care, and we'll see you next week.